The worst Ask Me Anything I've ever read came from a guy who said he was a paramedic and didn't always save people. I clicked because people were calling him a liar. It was one of those late night threads where everybody's bored and mean and wants a show. He posted like an actual medic, not like a kid role-playing. Short lines, no jokes, no big listen to my dark secret build-up. Just this flat, tired tone like he'd done 100 times, and the only new part was admitting it out loud. First, he tossed up a photo of a trauma shear's handle sitting on his lap. Hospital carpet under his boots. The kind of carpet you only see in places that smell like bleach and stale coffee. He didn't give them gore. He dropped a second photo, a pile of wristbands. 10, maybe 12. Names blacked out with marker. Dried brown smeared on the plastic like he'd pulled them off and shoved them in a pocket and forgotten them. Caption, "My souvenirs." That word hit harder than the stains. Souvenirs, like he went on a trip and brought home keychains. The thread split into two mobs instantly. Half the Anons turned into rabid fans, begging for proof like it was porn. The other half started preaching, telling him to turn himself in, telling each other they were screenshotting, like righteousness counts for anything when you're anonymous and scrolling. He talked shit to both sides. Not clever shit, just annoyed like they were wasting his time. Then he started describing the people he said he'd done it to. Frequent flyers. He kept using that phrase. Not a name, not a story, just categories. Junkies, old drunks, homeless guys with frostbite and trench foot. People who get wheeled in, patched up, and wheeled back out because nobody has a real plan for them except not here. He wrote like he was listing supplies in a cabinet. Male 40s, female 20s, unresponsive, found behind a dumpster. He didn't type hate. He typed indifference, and that was worse. Someone asked how you could even do that without getting caught. He said, little things. That's what he kept calling it. Little things. Leaving the oxygen line kinked where it runs under a blanket. Letting the tank run low and acting surprised when the sat drops. Taking the long route to the hospital because traffic, even when the roads are empty. Waiting an extra minute before you start compressions because you're getting set up. Pushing compressions too hard because ribs crack easy and there's always a way to write it up later as traumatic CPR. People argued in the comments like it was sports. Some were begging him to keep going. Some were calling him a hero, which made me want to punch my screen. A couple claimed they were EMTs and said he was full of shit, that protocols and partners and cameras would catch him. He replied that cameras don't watch the back of the rig, partners get tired, and paperwork loves simple answers. OT, cardiac arrest, DOA. He said nobody fights hard for people the system already decided were disposable. I couldn't stand how believable the parts were that didn't need proof. Like, yeah, of course the ER is slammed. Of course nobody has time to pull apart every timeline. Of course families don't always exist. Of course a guy found in an alley doesn't get a full investigation. I hated that my brain kept nodding along while another part of me screamed that this had to be fake because the alternative was, what? This is happening and we just don't see it. So I jumped in and called him a liar. I didn't do it politely. I told him he was full of shit and getting off on attention, and that if he was real, he'd be too scared to post. I typed like I was trying to drag him into daylight by force. He answered me directly, quoted my post ID, and wrote, "You'd never know. You only see the article, pronounced dead on arrival." That sentence stuck to my throat. Not because it was edgy, because it was so small. No grand confession. Just a reminder that from the outside, death gets packaged into a line and then everybody moves on. I closed the tab and my hands kept shaking like I drank too much coffee. I tried to laugh it off, but it didn't leave. I kept thinking about being helpless in the back of an ambulance. The straps, the bright lights, the way you depend on someone you've never met. I'd never had a reason to doubt that kind of help before. That thread planted one. It was like getting a splinter under your nail and realizing it's there every time you touch anything. Over the next week, the screenshots of the threads started floating around after it got deleted, because of course it did. People reposted the wristbands like a trophy. People made memes. People argued about whether he was real like it mattered. I told myself it was bullshit. I wanted it to be bullshit. I tried to let it die, but it didn't die clean. It followed me into regular life in dumb ways. I'd hear a siren blocks away, and my shoulders would tense like I was the one in trouble. I caught myself staring at EMS rigs in traffic, trying to spot the same red handle through the windshield like some paranoid asshole. I almost messaged friend about it, then stopped because what would I even say? Hey, I read a thread and now I don't trust paramedics. I'd sound like I needed medication. 2 weeks later, I ended up in an ambulance after a car clipped my bike. Nothing fatal, just blood and a ruined knee. I remember hitting the pavement and hearing a sound come out of me that didn't feel like a noise I chose. Then hands on my shoulders, someone telling me to stay still, my own breath going fast and thin like my body couldn't decide if it wanted to panic or pass out. The ambulance swallowed me. Straps went across my chest. The ceiling was white and too close. The smell was disinfectant layered over old sweat and rubber. I stared up and tried to slow my breathing because I didn't want to be the person who makes their job harder. I heard the medic ask routine questions. Name, allergies, head strike, numbness. His voice felt familiar in this awful way, like deja vu that makes your stomach drop instead of your heart. He worked like a machine. Gloves on, gauze press, cuffs squeezing my arm, fingers checking my pulse. No drama, no hosetashchen, just competent, quick movements. I told myself, see, it's fine. You're being paranoid. This is normal. Then I saw his scissors. Same chipped red handle, same scrape on the metal from that first photo. My chest went cold. I grabbed the rail so hard my knuckles hurt. I watched him the whole ride, tried to see if he hesitated, if he smiled. He didn't. He worked by the book. And because he worked by the book, my brain went feral anyway. I started tracking turns by the sway of the rig. I tried to read street signs through the tiny rear window. I watched the oxygen line like it was a snake that might get stepped on. I watched the Ford drip, waiting for him to forget something. Every bump made my knee flare and my heart hammer. The monitor chirped, and he told me my pulse was up from pain. He wasn't wrong. He just didn't know the other part. I wanted to ask him where he got his shears. I wanted to ask him if he ever posted online. I wanted to say, I saw you. But I couldn't. I couldn't even tell if I was seeing anything real or if that thread had just infected the way my brain interpreted every detail. All I could do was lie there and listen to the siren and the cabinet doors rattle and pretend I wasn't terrified of the person trying to keep me alive. We hit the hospital bay and the doors opened and cold air rushed in. They rolled me out under fluorescent lights and into the ER's noise and motion. I caught a glimpse of a trash bin overflowing with used wristbands, and it made my stomach twist. Of course, they were everywhere. Of course. But my mind didn't care about logic in that moment. My mind just replayed souvenirs. They handed me off. The crew disappeared back toward the bay like nothing happened. Nurses asked me questions. A doctor poked my knee and I almost puked. Eventually, someone told me it wasn't broken, just trashed, and that I'd heal if I didn't do anything stupid. I nodded and smiled like a normal person. Inside, I kept replaying the ride. At home, I cut my hospital wristband off and stared at the little printed barcode like it was evidence. I almost threw it out, then I didn't. I left it on the counter for days, daring myself to touch it, hating that a strip of plastic could make me feel owned. When I finally binned it, I washed my hands like I'd handled something dirty. I still don't know if it was him. If some asshole on me just reposted a random image. If my brain stitched it together because I'd marinated in that thread. What I know is this. Somewhere out there, in some city, a medic with that exact pair of shears posts about souvenirs, and nobody in his normal life suspects a thing. And a few thousand of us read it, argued, laughed, and then went back to bed. I learned real crime scenes get recycled as horror content from one smug bastard on X. He ran a long thread about found footage, claimed he worked in evidence, and liked to liberate interesting stuff. Total bullshit, I thought. The board's full of people pretending they have access to dark rooms and locked cabinets. Still, I clicked because the title promised a dump, and I was tired enough to keep feeding my brain garbage. He posted low-res stills of hallways, stairwells, empty kitchens, fluorescent light, beige walls, doors half open. The kind of nothingness that makes a nonce start vibrating. They circled shadows, screamed about ghosts, slapped red rings on blurry corners like that did anything. Hope he loved it. He paced a thread like a dealer. Drop a frame, go quiet, come back with a line about how we missed the shape by the sink, and the whole board would start zooming in like rabid dogs. Then he started slipping bodies in. Not gore, just shapes that made your stomach tighten. A shoe turned sideways at a doorway. A hand under a sheet. A bare foot hanging off a gurney edge, toes washed out and wrong. He tinted the pics green, stamped fake dates, renamed files with ritual crap, and watched people build lore on top. They called it liminal space sightings. They wrote full creepy pastas around the images like they were public domain, like nobody ever died there. That part got me more than the bodies. Everyone was so excited to feel scared they forgot to ask what the fear was standing on. Halfway down the thread, someone posted a local news link and wrote some version of "This is my town, what the fuck?" Murder-suicide, 3 years old. Same building layout. Same balcony railing. Same stupid scuff on the hallway baseboard. The anon wasn't being dramatic. They recognized it the way you recognize the dent in your own car door. Seeing that link snapped something in me. It wasn't spooky anymore. It was a real place with real history, and we were treating it like a haunted house attraction. Hope he didn't deny it. He laughed and typed, "You think cops take their own photos? We outsource." People went feral in every direction. Some anons yelled fed. Some yelled based. Some demanded more like they were ordering food. One guy threatened to report him, then immediately begged for a mirror link because mods will nuke it. Another called him a liar and demanded case numbers. Opie replied like he was grading homework. He posted a cropped sliver of a folder label and a blurred badge-looking patch, just enough to make the skeptics hesitate, and that was all it took. The thread's tone shifted from "prove it" to "holy shit, he's real." He leaned in harder after that. Said he pulled things from manuals, binders, archive drives, whatever got left on shared servers. Said he scrubbed metadata, downscaled, and reshot off a monitor so it looked like found footage. He bragged about watching anons cleanse rooms with sigils and prayers, like it proved he could make strangers kneel without knowing who they were kneeling on. When people try the moral angle, families, victims, respect, Opie hit back with something that landed because it wasn't even clever. He basically said the families don't get these photos, the system locks everything away, and even if the families did get access, they wouldn't know which file mattered. Then he pointed out the nastiest part. Half the thread had already saved the images, so the outrage was just cosplay too. That made people furious, and it also made them quiet, because he was right. I still thought he was puffing himself up until he posted one last image. A tiny apartment kitchen, crooked light fixture, dent in the fridge door, cheap linoleum with a lifted corner by the baseboard. Something on the floor, just out of frame, dark and low, like a collapsed coat. Caption, "This one's close to my heart." I froze. I knew that dent. Same model, same angle, same shitty linoleum pattern. A girl from my college died in that apartment. Gas leak. We did a candlelight vigil. Her name was Ellie. Not my best friend, not a stranger. I sat near her in class. I watched her pick at her cuticles when the professor cold called her. I loaned her a phone charger at a party, and she never gave it back. She posted normal college stuff, and that kitchen showed up in the background without meaning to. Cereal bowls, cheap cabinets, the dented fridge catching light like a bruise. Seeing it on X felt like someone had pried her life open with a screwdriver and scattered it across a sticky floor for strangers to step on. When she died, campus turned it into a fight before it turned it into grief. People argued like the details were a scoreboard. One guy I knew said, loud as hell, that she must have been drunk. Like that made it clean and explainable. A girl from my dorm screamed at him in the dining hall, and they almost started swinging. Then rumors ran faster than facts. Candle, stove, landlord, suicide, anything except the simple truth that sometimes people just die and you can't fix it. In group chats, people demanded the real story like they were owed it. Somebody posted a screenshot of a maintenance request and acted like they'd solved the crime. Somebody else wrote that Ellie always seemed off, like a dead girl's personality was evidence. We did the vigil a few days later. We stood outside with little flames shaking in the wind. Somebody filmed it for their story. A campus cop kept telling people to stay off the grass like rules mattered. I remember the wax smell, the cold air, the way the whole thing felt like a lid we were forcing down over something ugly and random. I remember staring up at the dorm windows and thinking, stupidly, at least her room stayed hers. At least nobody could take it from her and turn it into content. And here it was on X, tinted like a joke, served up as haunted wallpaper. I scrolled into the replies and wanted to smash my phone. People argued if the entity in the corner was real. They brightened shadows and saw faces and noise. They drew circles. They posted overlays. One anon wrote, "That fridge dent looks like a mouth," and a bunch of idiots agreed like they discovered something meaningful. Someone slapped a sigil on her tile and called it protection. Another begged OP for the full frame, like Ellie's last space was a collectible card. Nobody asked who lived there. Nobody asked why the camera was there. Nobody paused long enough to treat it like what it was, a room where a real person stopped breathing. And the part that made me feel the most disgusting was realizing I'd been refreshing too. I'd been scanning corners for proof like everyone else. I only got moral when I recognized the room. If it had been some other dead kid's kitchen, I probably would have kept scrolling and saved it like creepy. That thought hit hard enough to make me nauseous. It wasn't just OP. It was the whole machine, and I was inside it, feeding it. I typed a reply. I deleted it. I typed Ellie's name. I deleted that too. If I posted, "That's her kitchen," the thread would demand receipts, and receipts meant dragging her into the open so strangers could chew on her. I could already see the comments. Jokes, porn brain garbage, people turning her into a character. Protecting her meant staying quiet, and staying quiet felt like letting him win. So I reported the thread instead. I hammered the report button until my hands stopped shaking. I sent a screenshot to a friend from school, then regretted it the second it left my phone. She replied with one line, "What the fuck?" Then went silent, and I pictured her staring at the same dent, realizing the internet had crawled into a room we'd all pretended to seal shut. When she called, she wanted to blast it publicly, tag the school, tag local news, shame him into disappearing. I told her that would just spread Ellie's kitchen farther, give the thread a second life, give him exactly what he wanted. We fought like it mattered who was right. We hung up angry and sick. The thread kept mutating while I sat there sweating in my own room. Some anons demanded OP prove chain of custody. Some threatened to dox him. One guy posted a guess at his workplace based on a couple city abbreviations and the way he wrote, and OP answered with a laughing post and another hallway photo like he was untouchable. Other anons begged the doxers not to burn the source because they'd lose the dump. That line made me want to vomit. Even the people acting upset didn't want it to stop. They just wanted to keep consuming it while pretending their hands were clean. Mods nuked it hours later, after the images spread, saved, re-edited, folded into new stories. OP probably just made a new one with a new ID. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Over the next few days, I saw the same kitchen pop up again, cropped tighter, recolored, watermarked by random accounts like they owned it. People used it as a backrooms example, a liminal apartment aesthetic, a haunted gas leak room. Every caption felt like someone spitting on her. I started recognizing other rooms too, not because I knew them, but because I started noticing the tells, the chest-high angle, the blunt flash, the way the frame cares about documenting a space instead of composing it. Once you see that, you can't unsee it. Every eerie empty room starts to look like evidence. After that, the board didn't look fun anymore. Every blurry corner felt less like a ghost and more like a last breath cropped out for effect. I kept thinking about whoever took that original photo, standing in Ellie's kitchen because they had a document, not because they wanted to entertain, and how easy it was for some asshole to steal it, tin it, rename it, and watch strangers use it. Now when I see some eerie empty room on X, I don't wonder if it's haunted. I wonder whose last 10 minutes I'm looking at, and how many of us are jerking off our fear on top of their death. The mob that showed up outside my building didn't have torches. They had phones. It started with a classroom photo on pole. Some teacher in front of a whiteboard with a tiny pride flag on the wall. The thread title screamed about groomers. I clicked, and I hated myself for clicking because I knew what that place does to your brain. I recognized the school logo on a hoodie in the front row. My city, my sister's school. That's what made it go from stupid internet noise to something that felt like it was already inside my apartment, already breathing in my hallway. OP claimed the teacher made kids chant slogans. No proof, no audio, no follow-up. Just that single frame and a bunch of people frothing like they've been waiting all day for a face to glue their anger onto. Anance zoomed the picture, read the date off the board, guessed the room number from a crooked plaque, paused, and enhanced like it was a cop show. Someone posted the teacher's full name like it was nothing. They matched her earrings to her Facebook photos and bragged about it, like they'd solved a murder. I felt my stomach drop because I've seen docs threads before, and the moment the name lands, the rest comes like a flood. Half the replies wanted blood immediately. Call the school. Call CPS. Pay her a visit. The other half wanted to joke about it, post memes, make it a sport. A handful of people tried to slow it down, so it was a fucking flag, not a crime, but they got buried under slurs and accusations. That's the trick. They don't argue with you, they label you, and then the label becomes permission. The doc's dump rolled in. Her address, her number, her partner's socials, her mom's obituary from years ago. Like grief was just another file to drag into the open. Old screenshots, yearbook pics, some random blog posts she wrote about being a teacher. They pinned her entire life to that tiny corner of the wall. OP made a neat list of operations like it was a workplace project. Email templates to the principal, scripts for calls, copy-paste comments to leave under her posts. People posted screenshots of their sent emails like trophies. I sat there watching it and telling myself nobody actually goes outside over this shit. People type, people posture, people get tired and move on. Then I noticed the address. It looked almost right. Same street name, same block, one digit off. My building. I read it 3 times, hoping my eyes were playing tricks. It wasn't her place. It was ours. That made my skin go cold in a way I can't really explain. It wasn't even about protecting her at that point. It was selfish fear. A mob doesn't care if it's wrong as long as it gets to hit something. I thought about posting to tell them they had the wrong number, and the thought died in my throat. If I corrected them, I'd be handing them the right door. If I didn't, I was letting them crash into mine. Either way, someone gets hurt. That's what those threads do. They don't give you choices, they give you traps. I called the non-emergency line and tried to explain it without sounding insane. The woman sounded tired and kept asking if there was an immediate threat. I said there might be. They were talking about showing up tonight. She told me to call back if anyone came. Like I could calmly wait for the mob to knock, like I'd have time to do anything once it started. By evening, I heard chanting. Not a huge crowd, maybe 20 people, but it echoed between buildings like more. I went to the window and stayed back from the glass, so I wouldn't silhouette myself like an idiot. I saw phones held up everywhere, screens glowing, people filming each other, filming the door. A couple had masks and sunglasses. One had a cheap little light clipped to his phone, like this was a content shoot. They pointed at the entrance, narrated into their cameras, acted like heroes walking into enemy territory. Someone taped groomer, Over our buzzer panel, big letters, and I got this sharp spike of rage because they couldn't even be bothered to confirm the address and they still felt righteous. They started hitting every door anyway, banging on glass, yanking at the handle, shouting names they didn't even know were right. They filmed the building number like it was proof. My neighbor opened his door because he never ignores noise. He's older, built like he's done physical work his whole life. And he's the kind of guy who says fuck off before he asks why. He stomped down the hall and yelled through the door for them to get the fuck away. That should have ended it. Instead, it fed them. They shoved phones up, zoomed in on him through the glass, and started calling him a pedo lover on live stream. I heard the words float up through the thin walls like poison. He lost it. He pounded the door back. I heard someone outside laugh. That high, excited laugh people do when they think they're watching a fight on a screen, not standing in front of someone's home. When the cops arrived, it wasn't dramatic. 2 cars. No urgency. They told everyone to disperse. A few guys argued and tried to quote laws they barely understood, saying sidewalk, speech, rights like those words made intimidation noble. One of them kept filming the cop's face, baiting him, trying to turn it into another clip. Someone spat on the pavement and still held the phone steady like it mattered. Eventually, the crowd drifted away, not because they learned anything, but because they got what they came for: footage, adrenaline, a sense of doing something. Before one guy left, he turned and pointed straight up my window. I swear I hadn't even moved. I swear I wasn't visible. Maybe he guessed. Maybe he just wanted to make someone feel watched. He lifted his phone and held it there for a beat, like a warning, like a promise, and then he walked off like it was nothing. The next day, the school put the teacher on leave. That phrase hit me harder than the chanting did. It meant the machine had already decided the easiest path was to sacrifice her. She deleted everything. Her profiles went blank or vanished. News sites ran a vague piece about online controversy and concerned parents, like it was a tidy disagreement, like it hadn't involved strangers hunting down an address and showing up at doors. No mention of poll, no mention of the docs list, no mention of the wrong building. Just soft language that made the mob look like a community and made the target look like a problem. A week later, I checked poll again like an idiot, like scratching a wound. The same photo of her was posted in a different thread, stuck into a collage of victories. Names blurred, flag bright, comments full of laughing emojis, and we did it. They posted screenshots of a news story, the on leave statement, her deleted accounts like a scoreboard. Nobody mentioned that they hit the wrong door. Nobody mentioned my neighbor getting filmed and labeled. Nobody mentioned that they'd probably wrecked an innocent woman's career over a grainy screenshot and a hate binge. They didn't need to mention it because the details don't matter to them. The point was never truth. The point was the rush. Now when I hear a loud group outside, my body reacts before my brain does. I clamp my jaw. I stop breathing for a second. I look at the door like it's going to split open. I hate admitting this, but I check 4chan before I check the peephole sometimes, like I'm trying to see if my address is trending, like I'm trying to get ahead of the punch. That's what scares me most. How fast it trained me in a paranoia. How it made me feel like the internet can reach through the walls whenever it gets bored. I think about that teacher a lot, not in some noble way, just in this grim, practical way. She had a job, a life, a classroom. Then a bunch of strangers decided she was a monster because it felt good to decide it, and institutions folded because it was easier than standing in front of a mob. One digit off, and they still found people to burn. All it took was one photo and a bored mob of faceless, nameless fuckers. And they'll move on, but the people they hit stay burned long after the thread 404s.